welcome back to the Results Method podcast. And we have with us a champion.
Woo! We did it.
How many years in the making now, Sarah?
So many, 7 shows, and I think 5 or 6 years of working together.
And I was actually just speaking about this with a new consult that I did yesterday regarding the actual realities of the time frame it takes to build the physique that becomes pro level champion. So it's like not something that happens overnight. It is not something that you should be doing repetitive stages with because, and I used you as the example. I'm like, if you follow Sarah, she's a hard gainer, long, lanky limbed, like she's the hardest one to build muscle on. And it took us several years to get to the point where then you could actually do back-to-back shows.
Yeah, it did.
Without us compromising muscle or health, right? So there's many reasons why, but I digress for a minute to talk about that because I like people to hear. They see oftentimes, the win and the highlight reel of the actual final, sort of cut phase to stage and, the success that we get. But what they haven't seen, which you're actually very good at sharing, I might add, it's why I love your account, is all the stuff that goes into building that. Mm-hmm. That moment doesn't happen in that moment. It's happening every day, every rep, every meal prep for the consecutive 4 years prior.
Yeah, that prep was such a small part of the overall journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. That's just a point to make, side note and interesting fact. But we're actually here to talk about and unwrap the entire sort of Italy process. I know in our last, conversation, we were leading into the process of traveling to Italy and we were going through her whole travel process. And so today we thought we would discuss and let Sarah talk about how she found the peak week, the travel plan that we set, what went to plan, also unpacking the entire process. So the peak week itself, the show day, her first week in Italy afterwards as we moved into the recovery and reverse phase. And while stage might be one day, recovery is ultimately what determines the next level of success for Sarah. So it's a really big focus. And I thought this would be a really great way to unwrap all of it. So welcome back, Sarah. Welcome back to Brisbane with your crown.
Thank you. Still feels surreal, but yeah, everything was a dream from the show to the peak week, the travel, everything just went so well. And I feel like that's because we were so well prepared. You set that plan for me and then I literally just followed that. And I was lucky in that we didn't really have any major flight delays or any food go missing or anything like that. But honestly, to the T, almost to the hour, that plan went down without a hitch. Ali said, if you haven't listened to the previous episode, definitely go back and listen because it was very interesting getting all of those peak week protocols and the travel plan. But to the point where we had meal timings and she said okay, 2 hours into the flight, they'll be serving meals. This is when you'll have your meal at this exact time. And within 2 minutes, pretty much, of when I was meant to have that meal is when the people came back with the food cart to my seat. So
you can tell I've done this for decades and that I've done the international travel myself so much that I know these nuanced time frames down to a letter. But that was so funny because I was expecting I'd be within a half-hour window, but I was within, and you weren't the only one that said it. Christina said it too. I was within a 5-minute window. I went, whoa, go girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting good at this.
Yeah, and I think there was only one moment where we had a train, we missed a train and then the next one was delayed and we had a few hours at the train station, but I had all of my meals with me.
That's what I was just going to say to you. Now, I want to raise this because I think this is really important because remember I said to you, you're going to get in at this time. Technically, you would have time to go to, get where you're going, settle in, go to a market, get your food, prep some stuff. And I said, but you're not going to do that. You're going to have all of your food with you for that entire day in the event or unlikely event. Hopefully it's unlikely that shit goes sideways, right? I didn't want you to have a situation where a plane got missed or something got delayed or for whatever reason there was something going on. And there ended up being train strikes in Europe that we didn't know about until after the fact, right? So tell everyone how much better it was for you mentally, emotionally, physically in that moment at that point in prep sticky point coming through to a stage, having done massive international travel, to know you didn't have to think about that.
Yeah, so much better, honestly. Because I was planning to have my meal when we get to the Airbnb, my next meal, but like with those train delays and the strikes and everything, we ended up just sitting at the train station. So I just pulled out my food from my suitcase. It was nothing that I had to cook or buy or anything like that, and it was just honestly took away the stress. And having a meal as well just helps you think better.
Because you're not sitting there hangry, white knuckling it,
Yeah.
ready to kill everyone with your fork, your plastic fork.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just
Absolutely.
like, having the meals on the flight, everything was so easily laid out in the spreadsheet that you gave me. So it had all of my meal timings, exactly what I'm having, when I'm having water, when I'm having electrolytes. So all I did was follow that spreadsheet, tick it off as I had each thing, everything I prepared before I left for the flight, all in Snaplock bags. And I just wrote on it with a Sharpie, like the meal timing, what's in it in case we need to change anything. And then I would just kind of have those one by one. And it just made it
So much easier.
so simple.
And you weren't the only one either. Like poor Jen, she came in on the Friday and the strike had hit and she was 6-hour train rides. They were completely shut down. And then she had to get from where she was via a car. And because they were shut down, the bumper to bumper traffic, it took her like 9 hours to do what should have been a 5-hour car ride. And she said the same thing. She was like, thank God I've got all my food with me. You didn't have it where I had to get somewhere, which, would have been the case, I'd say, for most people. Prep food and then, stay on plan. She goes, I could just literally lay down on the back seat of this car and waste away the hours, but I had my food with me. So I think that's a really big key takeaway for anyone listening to this, right? Life is not perfect. We know that. Prep's never perfect. There's always shit that goes sideways. And when you are in international travel, there is absolutely Murphy's Law that is going to kick you in the butt if you're not prepared with contingencies for it. So flights will get delayed, trains will get delayed, traffic happens, schedule change. Like things do happen. So the more that you can actually have plans, strategies, and also be able to combat it in any given moment, the less likely it's going to be a major anxiety spike that's going to affect your conditioning, that is going to, create doubt and angst and all these things that will 100% follow you for the entire peak week and then to your stage performance. So look, it's not about predicting every problem, but I'm pretty good at knowing all of the potential scenarios and having, I guess a plan and a strategy just in case. But I also have all of you mentally prepared that, hey, if nothing goes wrong, punch the sky, we've had a great day, but expect it. And so if you expect it when it happens, it doesn't derail you mentally and it doesn't make you crumble, right? Like I try to build in all of you resilience and then I try to create agency so you guys can know in the unlikely event if I'm on a plane and I'm unavailable, what to do in what scenario too, because you've been given that if this happens, do this, if that happens, do that, flow chart almost for how to manage shit situations.
Yeah, 100%. And I think another thing that made the whole process so much easier is, like you said, just bring food sources that we can travel with that I've been having all throughout prep. So like half my suitcase, I think I had like 6 kilos was just food. I had, packaged rice cakes. I had microwave rice. I had my cream of rice. I think I brought peanut butter, protein powder, like all these things that we've been having all prep.
Yep.
So when I got there, I didn't have to try and match like macros of brands or sodium levels or anything like that. And the only thing I had to buy for peak week when I got there was, I think, bananas, chicken breast, and dates. That was it.
Mainly your protein sources, right? Like your fresh produce. But outside of that, we just everything. Really every potential variable that could be stresses. Okay. So, and I think, this is where preparation beats willpower every single day of the week, right? The more prepared that you are, the more that you are across all of the potential variables, the greater the result will be. The calmer the athlete, the better the physical conditioning, because the lower levels of stress and anxiety and psychological load, because we also take away decision fatigue and all of the other elements that come into you having to sit in the middle of a freaking aisle in a foreign country with foreign language speaking individuals and usually foreign labels trying to work shit out, right?
Yep.
So anyone listening to this that's, potentially being coached through international travel or has been coached and can laugh because they're listening to our stuff going, that was me. Just make sure that you pressure your coach to actually do the right thing by you with regards to your international plan, because it could be the difference between, you know, a first and a third placing on stage. If you have a moment that completely derails you early enough or even close enough to stage, it's really hard to come back from, because stress, I cannot stress enough that stress itself is going to significantly impact your final finish on stage. And if you haven't listened to it, listen to the last podcast, because we go through it quite a lot. We talk about the allostatic load and all of the physiological side effects of that, and it does show up physically. So I'm so glad that you found the travel plan, you know, easy to manage, well executed. You're always one of my most coachable, highly adherent, most executable athletes. So I never worry about you, and I give you something to do. You just do the damn thing. You always ask questions, which I like, and it is always a collaborative approach with what we do, and you get educated all the way through, but you just do the doing. So again, I never have to worry about you, which is lovely. You're like my least stressed client. You give me the least stress. My allostatic load with you is fantastic. But point being, you know, it really does make such a difference if you have a very well laid plan with contingencies factoring in potential problems.
Yeah, 100%.
So what made the peak week successful, do we think? Talk us through the peak week. I think one of the things worth sort of, you know, chatting about is that landing there and having a stress-free travel process would have 100% contributed to a better peak week. But your peak week itself, I think, was amazing. It was almost like, I think our finish on stage was even better than I was anticipating and what I was visualizing from it. And it really wasn't about a special trick and a magic trick and any special supplement. It was really about how we landed and then how we could build upon that.
Yeah, I think it really was that collaborative approach that made it so successful. And I think it was very low stress because we had that plan laid out and we were making adjustments like as we needed to. So, you know, while we had the plan laid out, it wasn't like, here's what you're doing for the day after you land. It was like, here's kind of the plan, and then we'll adjust it based on how you look. And I think mentally for me, like waking up the next day after 27 plus hours of travel, looking better than when I took off, like, that just put me in such a good mindset for the rest of peak week. And I think I was just really relaxed throughout the whole week, which I honestly think
really
made
were
it so successful.
Yeah.
There was a few times where you told me to just sit down and put my feet up, because I do like to run around and explore. And
Sarah is someone that if I left her to her own devices would be out with her bloody tourist map and checklist and doing, and literally checklist, because she's super misorganized anal organizer. She would have been doing all the things for the days leading in because she had spare time, because she usually fills her day from the minute she wakes at like 4 a.m. dumb o'clock through to when she falls into bed, between prep, work, and all of the things. And I'm like, no, lady. So we had this one day, she's rocking around the house in these eye, you know, the eye mask things that go underneath your eye, wearing a mask at one point, just pottering. And it was so cute. I'm like, yes, great. I said, lay in your bed, watch Netflix on your computer, do whatever, but you're doing nothing. We were going to go out and do things. And I'm like, you are a cabin prisoner. You're staying in the cabin. You're doing absolutely nothing.
in the massage chair.
Yeah, she did. She sat in the massage chair with her face mask on. It was hilarious. But I was like, yes. And I think it makes the world of difference. And you can attest to that now that you've gone through it. Had you have done all the crazy shit leading into it, and or even multiple photo shoots, the potential for that to have some level of impact on the physique is much, much higher.
Yeah, and we did have like that one day where I did end up going and walking around the expo, and we were tracking my weight and how my weight was moving, and we were carving up, and then my weight actually dropped after I was
and we're like,
walking
okay,
around. So then we had to top up again.
You're not doing any more walking. I actually had limits on her output for the day. Yeah. And
but it was interesting to see that impact. 100%. Like it kind of really resonated with me when I did that.
Yep, 100%. And look, everyone listening to this, not everyone can do that, because not everyone's coming in that level of condition where they actually can reverse diet to stage with really minimal output, right? So remember, it's individual. You know, you need to be looking at your individual variables, and it is individual planning on your end depending upon what you're sitting like, right? But that's where she sat. And that wasn't by, luck. That was intentionally planned throughout her entire prep to look that way when we got to that point. So, GC was just we're swinging in on the way through. Italy was always the one that was meant to look like that. So I'm super happy with how it rolled out. And, honestly, I'm glad that everything felt great because in peak week, the biggest thing was we maintained consistency. We maintained consistency in meal timings, relative consistency in her routine, even with us pulling back on the output as one should be doing if they've had a great prep. Hydration remained consistent. Sodium levels remained consistent and controllable. There was nothing dramatic in her peak week. It was literally a reverse diet 2-stage coming in with more fuel on board, but perfectly timed fueling so that we basically had her body responding well, peaking well, conditioning level, really coming through sharper every single day, looking fuller in the right places with the right level of, peaks, especially in that glute hamstring tying, because that was a one big change we were making from GC through to Italy. There was communication every day. Every day I saw her first thing in the morning. We ran through posing in the, unfed state. And then we would look at her several times throughout the day as, meals were coming through and we could start to see the change in the physique as a result of the substrates, right? So there was no really crazy last minute changes needed. I feel like everything was just perfectly, predictable almost with you for the peak week is probably how I would describe it.
Yeah, it was. And it was very cool to see those changes. Like, it's definitely the most dramatic changes I've seen in terms of responses from my body throughout peak week. And yeah, it was pretty cool to see, I guess, like the science in real life.
And it's like that if you have two variables, sufficient muscle mass in total, sufficient muscle mass for your category, and then also that you are sufficiently lean. So that's where we could really play with things. And it definitely looked different to GC because with GC, we were just about bringing her in as lean as we possibly could without compromising our initial trajectory and or health and or energy availability in a way that presented a great physique that looked great, didn't look out of place. But we weren't going to GC with, we're there to chase the crown. We're going to GC with, let's put the best we can on stage. Let's get the cobwebs off. Let's get some practice. Let's see where we're sitting. Let's look at this to inform our next GC stage level of finish that we need, which was great because it did exactly that. But it also gave us an opportunity to play with some variables in peak week too. Now, we've already got a lot of data and a lot of history, and we know what works with Sarah, and we've actually trialed things at different points throughout her entire year. So it's not like this was a winging it moment. But the Italy one was definitely the most textbook, smooth, beautiful one that we could have hoped for. So I love that. And I love that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was the dream, honestly.
She was so calm to the point where I was like, I feel like she almost, if you didn't know Sarah, it'd be like, has she been smoking pot? She's just way too chill, man.
So good.
So good. So that's exactly how peak week should feel, right? I think one of the biggest mistakes that athletes make is they're trying to create their physique during peak week rather than reveal it, because peak week isn't something that should be like, some big magic pill, and there shouldn't be massive things to change and there shouldn't be anything left to prove. There should just be a beautiful physique to present. And what we're looking for is those little 1%ers, right? To bring that little bit more conditioning, that little bit more shape or fullness in the right zones. And also too, energy. If you're dieting and pushing that pedal to the metal, trying to squeeze the last bit of body fat off your ass at that point, wow, you are going to turn up looking haggard, exhausted, lower energy on stage. Like, honestly, nothing about that peak week or prep is going to feel good, right?
Yeah.
So this is really what we want it to look like. So, you definitely brought one of the best packages we've had to stage in Italy. And what excites me, and we were already talking about it like 2 weeks out, is where we're going to go from here. It's like, yay, if that was, where we've got to so far. And also too, what we could see that we built in that time frame since you've been in Australia and could do the sessions with me over the next sort of 6 weeks before you start gallivanting around the world. We'll get more sessions in because I think then that sets you up for success with mastering the new phase and the specific lifts that we really want to capitalize upon and leverage for the development of the areas that we've identified that we're still going to be bringing up. Because what we are going to focus on long term from here, where to from Italy, if you will be about bringing the higher end of muscularity and conditioning to the pro bikini category. So we recognize, depending upon who's on stage, I mean, if Tani was on stage, it would have been a different outcome and a different level of finish. But it's like we recognize that depending who was on stage, that bikini category can be quite developed and quite conditioned and borderline top of range, almost stepping into athletic. So it's not going to do us a disservice to be chasing the highest degree of muscularity with the conditioning we know you can bring well to our next pro stage in Australia.
Yeah. So delts and glutes, I think, is
big delts, big glutes. We'll continue to pack out that ab section too, because I noticed that a lot of them have progressively more abdominal, conditioning and thickness. So we don't want to lose the small taper that you've got, but we've got such a small waist that we've got the capacity to develop some thickness there, and it will not compromise that at all, because you are team no waist with those long limbs, including the midsection. So I'm like, no, let's just go for it, right? I don't think it's going to do us a disservice. So that's our goal, and that's the conversations that we've had, because we also recognize that bikini athletic is just ridiculous. They're monsters at the moment. So it's like, we're not wanting to do that. That's not the physique that, Sarah wants to sit inside of, and I don't blame her. Getting massive is no longer on my bingo card either. It's a horrible feeling to sit inside of that in your off season, right? So I'm on board with the journey. I think that's what we're going to aim for. So if we actually think about that for a second, it's informing a lot of what we're doing in our recovery phase, right? And the best part is, with all of my athletes, but in particular with, there's probably a dozen of them, we're having conversations almost on the daily in the final stages of prep about where to next before they even hit a stage. And certain athletes can handle those conversations really well, because it's almost taking them out of where our focus point is right now to forward project. And if you don't have the right headspace, which is why I don't talk about it with all of them, that could be A, distracting, or B, could be taken or viewed, if they discuss or their internal dialogue is quite critical because they're perfectionists, it could be viewed as, well, I'm not going to be good enough for what we're about to do, which is not the case at all. Because realistically, even when you win a crown, you got shit to go away and improve upon. It doesn't matter. Like, I've won 3 world titles, and still weeks leading into the final third title was not complacent, was looking at my physique and going, oh man, I got to bring up this. I got to bring up this. This has got to be better next year. This cannot happen again next year. This has to be improved. Like, I'm talking to myself like that, right? At no point did that conversation turn into, I can't win what I'm about to go do, because that was never the case. But it is a very special, and I get this, level of athlete and level of mindset that can have a level of duality in their ability to go, I can go win this, but I'm still critiquing where I can be better next time round, right? Personally, I think the people that can do that are actually the individuals that go on to become, quite multiple time, winners, champions, and also longevity in the sport, sustainability in the sport, like all of the above, because there's no emotion attached to the outcome when you get it, right? You're that person. That's why we always have these conversations. You never let a conversation about the things we can do better next season or what we're going to focus on derail you from in the moment focus, which I love. So we were having lots of conversations before GC even, but then definitely after GC.
Yeah, and it makes the post-show process easier, I feel, as well. Knowing that you've got that next goal, and knowing that, we've got to do this process and this part of the journey to then get to that next level, which I think there's always going to be something to improve on.
I was literally just presenting on the off-season and the evidence-informed off-season process for the prep seminar yesterday, right? And one of the big parts that I talk about in it, because this is an education to coaches format, is it is up to the coach to educate, guide, and support the athlete through the final stages of prep into the off season. So one of the biggest mistakes we see from athletes is they get off a stage and they're like, okay, cool. See you, coach. I'll see you when I'm ready to cut for the next stage. Bum, bum, you're going to fail. You're not going to come back with anything better, and you're probably going to mess up the recovery phase. That's my first thought. Second thing we see is coaches going way too easy on the athlete when the athlete comes out and goes, oh, I don't want to see the scale move. Oh my God, I'm gaining weight. Or within a matter of weeks, I feel so uncomfortable, I need to mini cut, or they're slashing stuff. No, a good coach will hold them accountable to the off-season process. Now, the only way you can get a better result, mindset, or approach from your athlete is by them understanding exactly what is going to come around the corner after show, what's going to happen in the body, what's going to happen in the first couple of weeks, what the scale is going to do and why, and it is not body fat, where we're going to take this, what the expected rates of gains are, at what pace they should be gained, why are they being gained, where are we moving you in your recovery markers, why is that important, why are we monitoring for relative energy deficiency in sport and looking so much at energy availability, and if you haven't done that throughout your whole prep, you're probably in trouble, and it's probably a conversation you need to raise with your coach. Why are we not looking at this? Because it should be, but very few coaches do. So I'm just going to flag that as well. But in the post process, it's really important. And the reason Sarah can always exit a stage and move into this, and she's very open about talking and sharing the messy middle, is because we have those conversations and we're having them months before she even exits stage.
Yeah.
And I think that's a massive point I want to make in today's whole conversation, is that the success of a recovery and a reverse and then an off season is largely on the coach to provide the format, the structure, and the support. But I want to caveat this. If you're an athlete that's just eating like an asshole, even though your coach has done all those good things, then that's on you. That's not on the coach anymore. Because unless you're talking, showing up and talking to your coach and being very honest about the things that are happening, what's going on for you, the struggles you might be happening, they can't help you. They're not Jedi mind readers. And also there may be a situation where they may need to refer out, where you might need some support from someone that's a specialist in the space if your coach is inadequately qualified to work with you in that space, right? So that's just my 2 cents and little 2-second rant on the subject that I think is really important. But for us, we talked about it straight away. You already knew. You've done this. This is not your first rodeo with me in particular too, where we're always setting you up for the off season. Why is scales not a problem? Why do you view scales as not a problem in the first few weeks? And what do you know to be true in the first couple of weeks that, you would probably give advice to other competitors to lean into?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, knowing kind of what the expected rate of gain is and knowing that we do need to put that essential body fat back on and we do need to get our health markers back up and we need to get back to this healthy place, and knowing kind of, from the roadmap that you've given me, okay, this is our expected rate of gain each week. And it is a range, obviously, based on other markers, I think is the first thing that really, really helps me. And then just being in the mindset that, okay, the scale going up is not failure, because you've come from a prep where you're always chasing those drops and those scale drops, and knowing that you're kind of changing those metrics of success, I think really, really helps me. And then keeping that.
Do you feel like that structure helps you too?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm going to ask this is because, and this is something I talk about when we're looking at the mental health considerations of a reverse process immediately post stage and then leading into an off season. This is a major psychological event. I talked about this yesterday in the seminar too, is that you have been for months sprinting a marathon, caloric restriction, hormonal suppression, metabolic adaptation. There's hours of cardio, step count, like all of these outputs, right? You've been sprinting a marathon. At some point, you can only do that for a finite period and the wheels are going to fall off, right? That is inevitable. It's just physiology will work to a point and then it's going to 100% fail you, right? So the off season is imperative because it is what I classify as moving into a recovery jog. So you're still doing, for the first short period after, a more structured approach, right? but in a way that is allowing those markers and those adaptations to be reversed and your energy availability to be restored, right? Now, if you have been focusing with intense critical analysis of yourself and these targets and ticking these boxes and meeting these metrics and all of these things so anally for a massive number of months, right? You get your stage, you've had your moment, you jump off it. Then it's like, whoa, okay. All of a sudden, for everyone that's not you and my clients that are in this meticulous process at the other side with more freedom in food, and we'll talk about that in a minute, it may feel like as overwhelming as just immediately being let out of jail. Okay, cool. I'm seeing the sun and all the food and all the changes for the very first time. Like, imagine how overwhelming that would feel. That's what a competitor feels like when they've got no safety training wheels on out the other side, really. So without that structure, I feel like, where do you go? What do you do? You know, there's no ability when all of your hormone signals are, you know, compromised and there is no hunger and satiety cues working properly for 6 weeks. How do you stop yourself? How do you have a process where you don't just go and gain 5 kilos in the first week? Because most people will have a story or know of someone that has a story where it's looked like that, right? So my question to you would be, does the structure help? And then also knowing the way that I pitched it and put it together for you in Italy, knowing that I was like, Sarah, you're going to be having gelato. Sarah, you're going to be having pasta. And this is what it's going to look like. And these are the guidelines. And that we were still able to stay on track. Do you feel like that structure with intention helped you from not seriously derailing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think having the structure, but also the flexibility made me feel like I was still like on track, even though it was a different kind of on track to when I'm in prep. So I was having, like my daily gelato, and I was having meals out, and I was having steaks and pasta and all these things. But then I was also like, making my own protein oats for breakfast, or having like fruit and yogurt as snacks. And I think as well, just having those parameters, but that communication with you as well.
Yeah.
So I was weighing in, every few days while I was in Italy, and just so we could keep an eye on things and like tracking kind of roughly. So I knew I was hitting my protein and roughly what calories I was having. And there was one point where I messaged you and I was like, hey, I'm kind of in the mid range of our 2-week expected gain. And like, I've been going over my calories every single day. But output's been high, and you're like, okay, maybe we need to just rein it in just a little bit, just a fraction, which we did, but just kind of knowing what the parameters were to be able to rein it in that little bit, but still have the gelato and still have that flexibility really, really helped.
Well, we actually planned for you to have gelato every damn day.
Yeah, and I did.
Which was awesome. And I think too, for our listeners, what we did do too was we factored in, the pasta there, which is super clean, guys. Like, and I hate the word clean, but as in even people that I know that have digestive issues with like gluten and things like that can eat pasta in Italy and not feel like they've actually just had a dense, heavy, glutinous-based meal. Because I think whatever they do in Italy, man, they do it well, hey, because you just don't feel that. The second thing is Italian portion sizes are not American portion sizes. They're very much, they're very much almost controlled portions. They're great.
Yeah.
Like, you don't overeat. So
it's an entree.
yeah. So me knowing that, I knew how to prescribe guidelines where it was like, okay, when you sit down, you're going to be ordering these protein sources, which is still inside of the realm of what we've been eating. We just reintroduced some steak that she hadn't had for a couple of weeks. And then it was, okay, cool. So we're going to order the entree portion of a pasta, and these are the types to go for. So we did still have, without it being like completely new and all these reintroduced foods all at once, digestive disruption. We didn't have that because we combated for it, but we also had the ability for her to feel like she could actually be a tourist in Italy, post a show, and she came back spot on to the expected rate of gain, which was minimal. It was like 1.5 kilos up from stage. It was perfect. So I think that's really powerful for everyone at home to listen to, because one of the things that I think gets people is they go, well, I've been in this food jail for all this time. Now all these things all of a sudden are online. I'm in a foreign country and I'm on holiday. So I'm on holiday. And it's like, well, no, you're still not really if you don't want to become shamu within the next 3 weeks. And largely, if you gain weight like that, it is going to be 90% body fat. So it's like, no, don't do that to yourself. But if you've got a good strategy and can have the conversation with your coach and have it planned for, you can still enjoy yourself. I think that's worth, highlighting because you're a
Yeah.
prime example of how that can actually happen, right?
I think
Uh,
one like massive thing as well that's helped me on this recovery diet so far, but also all of my previous ones is like enjoying food with friends and family. Like if you go out for a nice meal at a restaurant or like you have a nice home cooked meal, you actually like enjoy proper meals and proper food. You're not
Correct.
stockpiling treats and snacks and cookies and all this stuff at home. Like never once did I go to the supermarket and buy all the cookies or
Mm,
all the chocolate or all the treats. And like even now I don't have any kind of treats or like,
yeah.
really calorie dense foods at home. It's going out and, enjoying a nice meal or coming here and having a slice of
Yeah.
banana bread with some
Before
butter.
before we start the podcast, I'm like, oh babe, I gotta have something to eat real quick snack. And I'm like, do you want some banana bread? Because for the last, I reckon easy 4 or 5 months, every time she's come over to do a podcast recording or a live check-in or anything, Christos has literally, I shit you not, had fresh banana bread in the oven.
Smells
And
so
she
good.
smells it, it smacks her in the face. And every time she's like, God damn you, I can't eat it. And then today I'm like, do you want a piece? She's like, yes.
And it was incredible.
So
But I
we've
think
toasted it, warm butter, warm banana bread, so good.
so good. And I think that's a really good example of like
Yeah.
enjoying food with good company rather than like, just stockpiling it at home. I
Yeah,
think that
correct.
makes a massive, massive difference.
Yes, you're not going and making emotional purchases that you're hiding from both family and your
Mhm.
coach because you feel like something is restricted or off the table.
Yeah.
Now, I do need to make a caveat on this because people would have noted that her increased expected rates and also her increase in total kcals are higher than a traditional. Well, it's because we've gone with a recovery phase, not a reverse. So if we're going to do a traditional reverse, we would have been more incrementally increasing, but there's a reason that we haven't. And it's because we know that we have a goal and we have 12 months turnaround time frame to get recovered, to put gains on, and then to cut to the next stage. It's not a timeline that I ever put an athlete through unless they've already been through the year. And in those years with me, there has been a substantial period where they've not competed for 2 or 3 years because we've spent a lot of time in the trenches doing the building. So we've done that. We've gone past that. We've even just hit our very first season where we were able to do a couple of back-to-back shows, right? So now we're going to be doing a shorter, so it's going to be a 12-month, just over. It'll be about 15 months in total between her recovery, build, and then next stage. So I think it's worth us sharing that because for other people and even some of my other athletes that might listen to this and be like, why did Sarah get that? Is because you, my friends, are on a reverse and that is different. So it is letting you know that, look, we have jumped up higher, faster. We've discussed what that, scale increase will be and the rough percentages between glycogen, water, gut content to then lean tissue because she was straight back in the gym on the Monday. We have the new plans in place to develop the physique already in play. We're going to be, really trying to recover the baseline markers, her health markers. She never lost a cycle, so we don't have to have that as a function. Reproduction stayed online, but we want to boost her EA and we want her training intensity and her recovery markers as our primary focus. Sleep has already been checked. She's already been she had like a 9 or a 10-hour sleep. That's amazing for her, but we're getting back to the 7.5 to 8 hour minimums, even with her heavy workload. So again, I want to caveat that because it's not asking her for just an extra 50 kcals, per week. It's actually, we had a nice increase, not ridiculous, but a nice increase that didn't follow a traditional pathway because we're actually in recovery. So we're looking for hormone replenishment, which is already decent, but we want it back to optimal. We're looking at energy availability at optimal as quickly as we can. I've got her positioned for it being fully recovered within the 6 to 8 week mark. She also wasn't super low though, because we were feeding into stage. We were sitting around that 34 kcals per kilogram fat-free mass leading into stage, which is lovely. And then we're looking at psychological well-being. She's a great athlete. I don't really have to worry about her too much on the mental side. That doesn't mean though that I become complacent as a coach and don't still have those conversations, checkpoints, flags that I'm monitoring, because I am, because she is human and she takes a lot of work on. So she's a high achiever. So there's other things I've got to keep in check with her. But right now, our goal is not staying stage lean, not holding on to that. We need to grow. We need to grow to be able to come back and chase additional crowns. So what's happening inside of her body right now is essentially we are trying to reverse the months of the marathon running. Does it feel like you run a marathon? You've sprinted it? It probably does.
A little bit, but at the same time, like, this is the best I've ever felt post-show. And I think that's a testament to the prep that we did and the approach that we had towards it. Like, usually after a show, I do feel a little bit run down and like
beaten up.
You often get sick in that after a show, but like, touch wood, this show I've been fine. Like, energy's already come back. You know, I still haven't got that intensity back in the gym yet, but we're only 2 weeks post-show. But yeah, all in all, like, I feel really pretty good.
Would you say with your intensity in the gym, we're at least like, 70?
Yeah, I would say probably 70%. Like, we're not hitting PBs or, overloading too much yet, but definitely better energy and intensity than it was right before the stage.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Good. Because what we're looking for is reduced overall fatigue in those sessions as we're continuing to improve, fueling coming into, out of, and also substrate utilization by the body. We will see continued transfer across to the sessions and increases in strength and increases in reported, capacity in your lifts, but also then in the recovery post. That's what I'm looking for.
Recovery is
2 weeks.
Definitely already better. Like, even a few little niggles in that I had in my body towards the end of prep, gone.
Excellent. Great. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. We've got, like I said, we'll hit some really good sessions together. I'll be looking at whether or not we've had, which by the way, you should also be looking at as an athlete post-show. You've just been biasing single poses and sides for a very long period of time in your posing. And whether you are aware of it or not, it does create oftentimes postural shifts and postural changes. And, your alignment can look not quite right. And then that translates and transfers to some of your lifts, which can then be putting you in a position where you're loading imbalance, building imbalance, right? So we're going to do a bit of work together over the next few weeks, look at her mobility, look at her postural positioning, make sure that I'm going to be reviewing all the main lifts, because before she goes gallivanting around the world for months at a time, I want to make sure that she's locked into those lifts and progressing them nicely. And you would take note that we've talked about the fact that we're going to have a 7-week runway before she goes. I haven't talked about changing anything. The plan's not going to change. Her training plan will remain the same. We're going to look at mastery of execution and proper alignment in all of the lifts prior to her leaving, so that without supervision and everything else, she can continue to progress them with lowered injury risk, but also maximal return on the development that we're aiming for. She will probably max the program out, I would say maybe 2 to 3 months after she starts taking off to gallivant around the world. So that means, and for everyone listening, she's not chopping and changing and doing something random or some crazy, thing she sees on Instagram. She's going to be following and executing the exact same plan for what might be 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Which is what the best athletes do.
And it's what worked for the last
100%.
season. So I think we did
what got the most gains.
8-9 months on
we sure
one
did.
program, which worked so well.
Because we were still progressively loading and it hit every element of the physique that we needed to bring up. And we saw that change remarkably. So now it's the exact same process, but in what we've got to bring up for the next stage, and we obviously keep doing our checks for progressive loading and review whether or not we've got plateauing or we've got any kind of issues that might show us that there needs to be a change, but systemically there's probably not going to need to be one. So if I could leave people with one message, it would be post-show, the biggest mistakes I see: stop trying to be stage lean. don't be married to your abs. They're going to always be there. They can be shown in a matter of, a short number of weeks if you needed to dial down on it. It is a temporary psychological uphill battle post-show, but lean into your support network and your coaching system because that's what's going to get you through it. I would also say that if you are fighting recovery or you are fighting dysmorphia and you're having struggles or you're isolating yourself, then you definitely need to be touching, base with your support network and your coach because they're signs that there's probably some more work that needs to be done in a much more extended off-season timeline to work on the foundations and also relationship with food and with self prior to moving into any future prep. And you got to lean into recovery because recovery is the key to your ability to bring something better to the next stage. And if you're not recovered and you're not building the foundations to improve your health markers and your metabolic baseline to have an easier, better prep, season on season should get easier, look better. If you're not doing that and you're then not building the mass that is the gap for the reason why you didn't win, and even if you did win, the gap between you and the pro that is actually currently at the world ranks, then you're not going to put something better on stage the next time you hit it, right? So respect the recovery phase, respect the off season. If you are feeling like you're struggling, get help in those areas. Don't rush to the next stage. Don't try to stay stage lean and don't hide yourself in your pantry, head down, bum up in a peanut butter jar or Snickers or whatever the hell else you've got going on and not talk about it or get help if you need it, right? Because I think you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your future self to, look after yourself post stage because it's not an easy time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a massive thing that helps me as well is just focusing on the benefits of that phase. Like rather than thinking about what you're losing from your prep or losing your abs, focus on the better sleep, the better training, the better energy, the food you get to enjoy, like all these things that you don't have during that prep phase. I think just focusing on those benefits really, really helps.
Yeah, I love that. I think that definitely helps people. So I hope today's conversation helped a few of you if you're coming out of a prep, a few of you if you're leading into stages for what might, lurk behind the closet door on the other side. I want you to basically have, lean into the planning and the decision making that goes into a structured recovery and off-season phase because I think that's what's going to set you up for success. Sarah, massive congratulations. It's been a long time coming. I'm so proud. I literally cried.
She did.
I was like, oh my God, proud mum moment. And it's been so amazing to witness your evolution as a woman, an athlete, a competitor, and, a pro. But you were always a pro in my eyes. You were a pro long before you wore that status. And I love everything about you as an athlete and as a human. And I really love that we got to share so much of your journey with everyone that's watching because I'm hoping people can see how it can look if they don't have the experiences you've shared. I'm hoping that they feel confident that that is possible for them too and that, they're having the conversations required to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll link both of our Instagrams below because we'll be sharing, everything throughout this next recovery and build phase as well.
Off season's not sexy, right? Like we don't see too many people showing dramatic IG reels and, highlights about getting bigger. Like we just don't. They share all their shit as they're super sharp and super conditioned and ridiculously low levels of body fat. I'm not interested in that. I'm way more interested in the journeys that show the messy middle and that actually educate people on what it takes to look like that. Because that looks great. It's 5 minutes. It's a 5-minute window, really, technically, if you think that it's a 12 to 18 months, sometimes 2-year journey to get to that. That's a 5-minute window in time. I'm way more interested in seeing the application of what people do to get that finish. And to me, that's the athlete. Yeah. The person on stage isn't. It's the person in the journey and the person you become through the journey. So if you're someone that's got a great journey, tag me. I'm always up for being a cheerleader, even if you're not my athlete. But until next time, everyone, please, we always really love hearing from you. And a lot of you have actually been coming up and telling me how much you're loving the podcast or DMing me. And I love that. Thank you very much. means a lot to us. And we would love to hear your feedback on what you would like to see, anything you'd like us to share. I'm obviously going to get back into sharing a bit more about my sprint triathlon journey too. And I've got some athletes in some different sporting fields that we're going to have coming on as guests as well, which I think will be really cool and really interesting. I've got a couple of high rocks. I've got a couple of others in endurance, based areas. So we're going to have a really good mix of people coming through. But if there's anything you specifically want to see, please let us know.
Yes. Thanks, guys.